All right, so we're in Ezra chapter 2. Shalom again to everybody. We're in chapter 1 yesterday. When you look at some of these chapters, you get like a lot of cultural insight, um, as well as, you know, just general counsel. We saw yesterday about how important it was for the wife to respect her husband, because if not, then a lot of other women will be disrespectful toward their husbands. Um, I mean, the scriptures specifically state that that was the mindset of these people when Vashti refused to come and see the king when the king called for her. So now the king wants to get all these other women to be able to select, wives and to have a main wife as the queen. All right, that's the way it was in that world at that time, and it's a lot like that in other countries in the world, even now, especially with royal families. Okay, now we're in chapter 2, Esther, whose name is Hadassah. Esther is another way to actually say Ishtar, which is a word that was assigned to a false goddess. Um, just like Nike, that's a word that means victory, but it was assigned to a false goddess. So the word came first, not the false goddess name. It's very important to understand that. All right. We have a few chapters to go through. So I want to do it, kind of expeditiously. And I'm going to start with chapter 2, verse 1 right now. It says, "Now after these things, the king ceased from his anger and no longer was mindful of Vashti, recalling what she had said and how he had condemned her." So he remembered when he started, maybe getting lovesick or something, he remembered the disgrace and the shame that she caused him. This was a very big thing in the ancient times. And even up until recent times, it was a very big thing for a woman to refuse. I would say maybe I wasn't living in the 60s. I was barely alive in the 70s, but I would imagine in like the early 60s, 50s, and 40s, women and men had a defined role of authority and subordinate position in the household. So they didn't have to deal with a lot of the problems that we had now. Um, the family structure was together more, the parents grew up in two household families. Any generation before me, all right, I was born in the early 70s, 73 to be exact. Any generation before me likely grew up in a two-family household. Any generation from my generation forward and younger likely grew up in a one family household. Maybe the families were together at one point. So he's remembering all of the turmoil that happened. It says he's recalling what she had said. Verse 2 says, "And the servants of the king said, let uncorrupt and beautiful maidens be sought for the king." That means this word means mature, pure, mature young women. "And the king shall appoint commissioners in all the territories of his kingdom, and allow them to choose young maidens, beautiful in appearance, for the harem in the city of Susa, and let them be handed over to the king's eunuch, the guard of the women, and let cosmetics and other such things as needed be given to them." So when it says young maidens, this is talking about women, young girls, and young ladies, usually between the ages of 14 to 18. But they had to be able to carry a baby, to take care of a baby. That means they had to have full development. So it wasn't just about the age, it was about the age and whether or not this woman was able to be a biological and, a good mother, whether she's going to be able to be a good mother. So between the ages of 14 and 18 is the range that the Persian officials were looking for. And again, when we go back to 1960, when you start counting, you see how old your grandmother was when she had her first child, you may be surprised. You may be surprised because a lot of them were between 16 and 18. All right. Um, so now the cosmetics, I want to make a mention. The cosmetics is a word, calopizo. It's not the cosmetics that we think about now. You know, Maybelline or Max Factor or all of these beauty supply companies for those type of cosmetics. This was, you know, these were cosmetics that were like for skin, hair, nails, and scent of the woman's body to keep her hair naturally detangled, to keep her nails shiny, to keep her cuticles looking good, to keep her hair smooth, her face smooth and free from blemishes. And so she would have a pleasant, general smell about her. All right. So this was cosmetics for a long-term effect. This was not cosmetics to conceal or to hide. And that's the cosmetic industry now is to conceal and hide things. The cosmetics back then, what it's talking about was to enhance a person's natural beauty with natural things that would have a long-term effect on your body. I'm gonna put this cream on my face that's gonna clear up blemishes. It's gonna tighten up my pores. Okay, it's gonna make my skin more radiant. All right. And these are the types of things, kind of like if you put on cologne sometimes or perfume and you may shower very well. And then when you come out the shower, you can still smell a residue. That good cologne, you're going to be able to still smell it sometimes after you take a shower because the ingredients are so natural and so strong that they stay on your skin. And this is what is going on with these cosmetics back in those days. All right. Verse 4 says, and the women who please the king shall reign instead of Vashti. And the command pleased the king, and he did accordingly. So these men are giving him counsel on how to do it and what he needs to do. So he was not too big to take advice. Now there was a Judean in the city of Susa whose name was Mordecai, who was the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, who was of the tribe of Benjamin. So Kish, which I think it's talking about Kish. He was a captive from Jerusalem whom Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had captured. Now, Mordecai wasn't a captive from Babylon, but his ancestor was. So that's what it's talking about. And he had a foster child. This going talking um, about Hadassah or Esther. And he had a foster child, the daughter of Abihail, the brother of his father, and her name was Esther. So this is his first cousin. Esther's his first cousin. It's very important to remember that. And you can look in Deuteronomy chapter, you can look in Deuteronomy chapter, not Deuteronomy, but you can look in Leviticus chapter 18, all right? And it tells you everybody that you can marry or cannot marry in your family. All right. Um, Now when her parents died, he raised her for himself as a wife. Now, the Hebrew says as a daughter, but the Greek says as a wife. And the reason I'm talking about Leviticus 18 is that at this time, it was not uncommon for first cousins to marry. All right. So it was not uncommon for first cousins to marry. Now, was he raising her for himself or by himself to be a wife? Look at the Greek and look at the Hebrew, look at the society at that time. You may have a different story, but if we take it at face value, the text appears that the text says that he was raising her for himself as a woman, to be his woman. But again, that's questionable, but it's not totally unrealistic considering the laws of marriage and your family are written in Leviticus chapter 23, Leviticus chapter 18, and this would not be unlawful, all right? Um, but again, we know he had integrity. We know he was an upright and righteous man. So there was nothing inappropriate going on between the two of them. And the maiden was beautiful. Again, when it says maiden, all right, this is talking about a pure, mature young lady. Um, so when the ordinance of the king was heard, they gathered together many girls in the city of Susa under the hand of Ai, and he brought Esther to Ai, the guard of the women. So Mordecai brought Esther to Ai, which was one of the king's top men, all right, on his mission to, find a wife find wives for the king as well as a queen. Again, when it says girls, it doesn't say girl in the original writing. It says this word that means a pure, mature young woman. So, and it's the same word that we saw in verse 3 when it said young maidens, but they used another English word, but it's the same Greek word. So Mordecai said, "Well, I'm gonna take her, I'm gonna take her to be in this marriage pool, so to speak, for the king, to see if she can be part of the king's family." Okay. Moving on to verse 9. And the maiden pleased him and found favor with him, talking about Ai, which was the king's representative in this matter. And he hastened to give her cosmetics and her allotment, and the seven girls appointed for her from the king. And he cared well for her and her maidens in the harem. So he took care of her. So he took a liking to her. All right. Which means not only was she beautiful, but she didn't have a stank attitude. Because you can't have a stank attitude and people being all nice to you. You're not in the ancient world. Um, and stank attitudes is something relatively new. Women in the old days didn't really have stank attitudes like they have now. All right. As stank. Esther did not reveal her race or her country, for Mordecai had ordered her not to tell. And every day Mordecai walked through the women's courtyard to observe what might happen to Esther. Now, this was the appointment time for a girl to go into the king. When she had completed 12 months thusly, okay, I pay very close attention. For the days of treatment comprise 6 months of being anointed in oil made from myrrh, and 6 months of aromatic spices and women's cosmetics. All right. So the myrrh, that's an antibacterial, it's an antiviral, it smooths out the skin and it gives you a good smell, gives the woman's skin a good smell. That's why we mix frankincense and myrrh together because they both have a pleasant smell when combined together. But when you're applying this, you know, consistently for 6 months, it's going to have an effect on your overall body scent. It's going to make you smell more fresh. So we put alcohol. People put alcohol in their skin now. When you go to the Middle East, they put attars on. Look it up, Attar, which are made from natural oils, natural extracts, and they have a tendency to last, a little longer. You know, um, a little longer. All right. So now the way they would do it, they would crush the myrrh and they would put it in like a shallow pan and then put some type of oil into that pan. And they would mix it up, every couple of times a day. And then the powder would settle. And then eventually the oil started to smell like the myrrh and they would filter it out. All right. They would use copper. They didn't use glass as much, but they would use like copper or clay tin or clay tray and put the oil in it. All right. You can still do that now, because the we didn't use essential oils per se. We would extract the oils and we would take most of the qualities of the oils. All right. So with this myrrh, it would be mixed with the oil and they would just put it on the body regularly. And it was part of a whole regimen. Now, the aromatic spices, um, and the cosmetics was another 6 months. So again, the myrrh was by itself, so it was very potent for 6 months. Then once you got the myrrh, now you move on to these other spices and these other natural products to enhance your beauty. All right. Um, Avocado oil, sesame seed oil, olive oil. You can put those on your skin and your face, and now, and it'll make your skin, more smooth, more shiny, more radiant. You don't have to put on all of these things that have 20 unnatural chemical ingredients on you. They may work on the outside, but they're doing damage to you on the inside. Okay. Um, and then she goes into the king, and whatever she asks will be given to her to take with her from the harem into the palace. She enters in the evening, and toward morning she hurries away into the second woman's apartment, where Ai, the king's eunuch, is the guard of the women. No longer does she go in to the king unless he calls her by name. So it's two women, two apartments. They got the one before they go into the king, and then they got the one where they've been to the king. All right, so they're saying that a woman would come into the king, they would be with the king overnight, and then they would go into the other apartment, and then the king may never see that woman again unless he calls her by name. So she couldn't just say, why haven't you been see me? This ain't no way to have no relationship. I don't even see you. I ain't signed up for this. Okay. Um, and when the time was completed for Esther, the full year of waiting, the daughter of Abihail, the brother of the father of Mordecai, to go into the king, the eunuch who guarded the women refused nothing that she commanded. For Esther found favor from all who saw her, and Esther went into Ahasuerus. Now they say this is probably Artaxerxes I. That's the strongest candidate, and I believe that Josephus says the same thing. The king in the 12th month, which is Adar, all right, so the end of the year, in the 7th year of his reign. And the king loved Esther, and she found favor more than all the other virgins. And he placed the king's crown upon her. Then the king held a drinking party for all his friends and those with influence for 7 days. For 7 days he celebrated his marriage to Esther and granted rest to those under his reign. Now Mordecai was attending in the courtyard, and Esther had not revealed her country, for Mordecai had commanded her to fear Yahweh and to keep his commandments as when she was with him. And Esther did not change her way of life. So she was brought up as a righteous, obedient uh, woman um, to the Most High and subordinate to the male authority figure. Um, so it's very important. Her upbringing was very important. That's why, we started out earlier by saying that, hey, when you have the father in the house, it's a big difference. Everybody knows this. It's no debatable point. Everybody knows that a father in a household, you know, makes a big difference, a positive impact. Um, so when a mother does not allow the child to be in the father's household because she wants to raise the child by herself, she's increasing that child's odds of being in trouble with the police, of going to jail, of doing things with their body that they shouldn't be doing, to bringing dishonor to themselves. It's not something that doesn't have an effect on the child. Okay. Um, Now we go into verse 2, verse 21. But the two eunuchs of the king, the chiefs of the bodyguards, were distressed because Mordecai was promoted, and they were seeking to kill King Ahasuerus. All right, so these guys got jealous of Mordecai, but they said they want to kill the king. Um, And the matter was revealed to Mordecai, and he made it known to Esther, and she reported the plot to the king. And then the king examined the two eunuchs and hanged them. And the king ordered that a memorial be recorded in the royal library in praise of Mordecai concerning his goodwill. All right, so Esther went through a lot of preparation period. When you look at when I studied about this time period, which is roughly the 5th century BC, when I studied the time period, they said that it was most likely that they didn't use glass for things like this. All right, they were using, some more heavier duty type of metals or things that are meant for the fire. They may have had access or science behind certain glass things, but it was a much more difficult process than what we have now. All right. There was a much more difficult process than what we had now. So that's why I said that they didn't use the glass jars and things like that. They had, metal that could be fashioned a lot easier. Not saying they didn't have glass, but there was a lot easier process and much more durable process to just use the copper or to use steel or to use clay um, for the processing of the resins into oil. All right. So now these guys, they are on a plot to murder the king. All right. They are on a plot to murder the king. Mordecai finds out, and Mordecai is written down in a book of memories. All right. Now remember the 7 days. The 7 days is reminiscent of the 7-day feast that we see now. This guy is having a feast like this. And then if we go back over 1,000 years, because remember, this is about, between 580 and I think 580 and 560, if I'm not mistaken. Ayundabar, they, um, they were, in Persia. But if we go back 1,000 years to 1400s, 1446, that's Abraham. I mean, that's Moses coming out of captivity. If we go back 400 years before that to 1800s, that's Abraham. So we know that sometime, but then maybe like the 1600, 1600 BC, in that time frame, Jacob got married and he had a 7-day feast. So you got the same 7-day feast associated with the marriage that we see from Jacob, our father, or Yaakov, being done miles away by Persians over 1,000 years later. So this was a common thing, a 7-day celebration, for the marriage, celebration. Okay. Chapter 3. And after these things, King Ahasuerus exalted Haman, son of Hammedatha, okay, a Bugayon. The Bugayon is talking about the Agagite, all right? And he elevated him, and he assumed the first seat among all the friends of the king, and all the men in the courtyard bowed low to him. For thus has the king ordered that they do. But Mordecai did not bow down to him. And the men in the courtyard of the king said to Mordecai, Mordecai, why do you disobey the order spoken by the king? Every day they asked him, and he did not listen to them. So they informed Haman that Mordecai was resisting the commandment of the king, and Mordecai pointed out to them that he was a Judean. All right. So now they said, why are you not bowing? Why are you not bowing? Now, what's good about this is that they let it ride for a minute. They didn't just like straight up snitch on him. They let him do it for a minute, and then, they weren't content with what he was saying to them. So they said, man, we're gonna tell the king. I mean, we're gonna tell on you. All right. So they went and told. They told Haman. which is the king's right-hand man now. Hey, the people, you know, certain people ain't bowing your man Mordecai. All right. But now everybody knows that we had laws that were different. So we got to pass a lot of times for doing things that everybody else had to do. Now, when Haman learned that Mordecai did not bow down to him, he became very angry, and he resolved to destroy all the Judeans under the reign of Ahasuerus. And he made a decree in the 12th year of the reign of Ahasuerus. He made a decree saying what? And he cast lots after day and month after month in order to destroy the race of Mordecai in one day. And the lot fell on the 14th of the month of Adar. Then he spoke to King Ahasuerus, saying, there is at your disposal a nation which is dispersed among the Gentiles throughout your entire kingdom, and their laws are more peculiar than all the laws of the Gentiles, and they disobey the laws of the king. It is not advantageous to the king to allow them to do this. Now, let's talk about this diaspora impact. That kingdom they're talking about had Israelites throughout that Persian Empire, which went all the way over to Bulgaria, went to Greece, it went to Turkey, it went to the Caucasus regions, it went to Armenia, it went to Afghanistan, okay, it went to Pakistan, it went to Bahrain, parts of Saudi Arabia, but in the West African diaspora, the empire went also into Egypt and into Sudan. All right. So just look up the old empire of Artaxerxes I. Look that up, and you'll see how big it was. But it tells you that there were Israelites scattered throughout. There were Israelites scattered throughout the whole empire. So Israelites were everywhere throughout this empire. So we weren't just in Jerusalem, and we weren't in, Russia and Poland. Well, I'm sorry, not Russia and Poland. I meant to say Poland and Germany. But we were in part of modern day Russia. And we are there now also. Abkhazia, that's a region in western part of the country of Georgia. Abkhazia, Abkhazania. And there's a lot of Israelites there now. So a lot of our people are mixed in among the Gentiles in these regions. Iraq, Iran, Kuwait. There's a whole dispersal of Israelites in these places. Okay. But he wants to, get rid of all of us. He wants all of us to be taken out of existence. He wants all of us to be destroyed, to be killed. All right. Now, he said this: if it seems good to the king, let him command to destroy them, and I will draft 10,000 talents of silver for the treasury of the king. And the king removed his ring and placed it in the hand of Haman to seal concerning the thing written against the Judeans. And the king said to Haman, you hold the silver and deal with the nation as you wish. So the king's like, I don't care, kill him. Very callous. Then the scribes of the king were summoned in the first month, in the 13th day. And they wrote as Haman ordered to the generals and to the rulers over every territory. Listen, from India, all right, from India to Ethiopia, all right? So Sudan was part of the ancient Kushite empire. Sudan, Ethiopia. I say Sudan because Sudan is a northern part of it. All right, and Ethiopia is like the center part of it, and Somalia would be like the southern part of it. Maybe going into Chad a little bit on the western part of Sudan and Sudan and Ethiopia. But it also counts South Sudan now, because South Sudan wasn't a country back then. So you have a lot of tribes of people. So a lot of Israelites were dispersed from India to Ethiopia. So when somebody comes from India, or when somebody comes from Ethiopia and any place in between, it says, "Hey, my ancestors were Israelites," it could very well be true. Okay, it says to the 127 territories and to the rulers of the nations according to their language from Ahasuerus the king, and he sent by letter carrier throughout the kingdom of Ahasuerus that they should destroy the Judean race on the first day of the 12th month, which is Adar, and that they should plunder their possessions, all because somebody didn't bow down to him as he was walking by, and somebody went and snitched on Mordecai. And then the king said, "I'm gonna kill you." Haman said, "I'm gonna kill you and your people." And when he said, "I'm gonna kill you and your people," what happened? They collected money and put the plan in motion to eliminate us off of the planet in all of the territories. Okay. And copies of the letters were posted, and to steal all our stuff too. And copies of the letters were posted in each territory, and it was commanded that all the nations be prepared for this day. And the deed was hastened even in Susa. The king and Haman were getting drunk, but the city was troubled. Now, it's also important to mention that one, they're partying and we're about to die. They're partying, okay? Um, but they're giving this decree for all of the Israelites to be killed. This big judgment day of destruction. Now, what's not written here is that quite naturally, you're going to do, you're going to either, a few things you could do is leave that part of the empire or leave from his empire in general. Or you could stay and try to fight, or you could try to appeal to the king to get some help to not kill all of the Israelites that are living in that territory. Okay. And also, this is the same thing that happened in 1492. Not only in Europe, with when the Israelites or the Jews were expelled out of Spain and Portugal and killed, but it also happened under the Songhai Empire, Songhai. It happened under the Songhai Empire, of which Mansa Musa became a famous leader of the Songhai Empire before the incident that I'm talking about in 1492. But in West Africa, in 1492, there was a ruler named Askia Muhammad, and they passed the same law that the Europeans passed in Spain. If you're a Jew, you got to get out, or you're going to go to jail, or be a slave, or kill. Get out, slavery, or murder. Those are the options. So you got to get out, or you're going to go in slavery, or you're going to be killed. So whichever one. All right. So, um, so this was throughout the Songhai Empire, though, and you can look this up. This is not a secret, okay? Because if there's if there's not a large number of Israelites in that empire, there would not be a need to pass a royal decree that all the Israelites are going to have to get eliminated from the Songhai Empire. So the Spanish royal government did it, 1492. Also in 1492, the what became Mali slash Ghana, or mainly Mali Empire did it also under Askia Muhammad, Askia. You can check that out. So this has always been happening to the Israelites. Okay, on the plantation, we were getting murdered. On the reservations during the movement of our people from west to east, um, we were getting murdered. But now also remember that there's a very high probability that Askia Muhammad, just like Mansa Musa, were Israelites, but that they're converted to Islam. They converted to Islam, and the Spanish influenced them to pass that same policy. But, oh, my bad. There was another option besides jail. It was you get out, jail, slavery, or convert. So that's when a lot of people converted to Islam in West Africa. Specifically, I'm talking about in Mali. Mali has the biggest population of ancient Black Jews, of ancient Jews in West Africa. And they know that they're Jews by ethnicity through their father's lineage, not their mother. All right. So they have that information out there now. I did some research on it about 2008 and 2009. And one of the brothers' name is Ismail Haidara, Haidara, and he had a organization called the the Institute of Israelite Friendship. But the Jewish people, when they translated into English, they said the Institute for Jewish Friendship. No, he said Institute of Friendship of the Israelite world, but they changed the Israelite to Jewish, right? So that organization exists to this day in Mali, but they also talk about Andalusia, the relationship that they had with Spain. So there's a historical connection between Mali and Spain in the same order that Spain went into the Songhai Empire under Askia Muhammad at the same time frame. So there is a historical connection between those two regions as well as the people. So they want to just eliminate all of the tribes of Israel. That's what's happening. All of the tribes, and they want to just murder everybody, get rid of all of us. So it says, but this is the copy of the letter. Um, the great king Ahasuerus writes these things to the rulers in the 127 territories from India to Ethiopia, and the governors placed under them, governing many nations and prevailing over all the world. I do not wish to act haughtily with arrogant authority, but always considerately and with kindness to make the lives of my subjects continually calm, to render my kingdom both civilized and passable to its boundaries, in offering to restore the peace desired by all humanity. But after inquiring of my advisors how this should be brought to conclusion, Haman, who excels among us in sound judgment and is distinguished by his unchanging goodwill and steadfast faithfulness, and has obtained the second post of honor in the kingdom, pointed out to us that a certain hostile people is mixed together in all the tribes throughout the world, who are opposed in their laws to every nation and are steadfastly neglecting the ordinances of the king, so that the common government administered blamelessly by us is not established. So one, they say that we are mixed everywhere throughout that empire. So we didn't just go into West Africa. We were all into Asia and a Mediterranean region also, not just into West Africa. So we have remnants of those peoples there. And it says that we have a whole different set of practices. At that time, the Israelites had not started to do the things that the different nations were doing because the political stability was still there, even if you were following a different, following the true God of Israel. So they weren't really pressing us, but we didn't follow their gods and their ways conflicted with the Torah. We didn't follow, we didn't follow that either. Okay. Um, so they claim that us worshiping the God of Israel is is a is a threat to their well-being. Um, Therefore, having comprehended that this nation alone is set continually in opposition to every person, changing laws and having entertained a strange way of life, being ill disposed to our affairs, and is actually accomplishing the most injurious things against the stability of our kingdom. Therefore, we have assigned those who were signified by you in the letters written by Haman, who is set over state affairs and is your second father, to utterly destroy all, along with their wives and children, by the swords of their enemies, without pity and sparing of any, on the 14th day of the 12th month, Adar, okay, of the present year, so that those people who have long been and are at this very time enemies of the land, having gone down violently into Hades in a single day, may render hereafter to us a continually firmly based and steady public affairs. So what he's saying is these people are a threat to the stability of our government, and we have to kill them. Okay, not just limit them to their land. All right, not just confine them to their own territory, not just confine them to their own space, but not restrict them, but to actually kill them is the only thing that we can do. And what's sad about this is that, I mean, they could have said, hey, all of y'all go back to your own homeland. They didn't do that. They said, we're going to kill them all. Because Israel, our land, was also part of the territories that were ruled over by Ahasuerus. So our country, people that were in our country and the people that were outside of our borders were all marked for death. All of them were supposed to get killed. Okay. Um, I have heard that Waida is a place name and population of of ancient tribes of Judah and West Africa. Yes, I've heard that. Um, so they want to just eliminate us. Okay. And I think when you look at this story, when you look at this historical account, you don't think it's hard to overlook the fact that Israel, our homeland, is also included in that equation. That Israel is part of those groups of people that's about to be destroyed. Not the groups of people, but part of the territory. Our actual land of Israel, Eretz Yisrael, or Aratizah Yasharahla, is also going to get destroyed in this extermination, right? This massacre. Verse chapter 4. Now, when Mordecai discovered what was being perpetrated, he tore his own garments and put on sackcloth and sprinkled himself with ashes and rushed around through the streets of the city, crying with a great voice, a nation which has done nothing unjust is to be destroyed. And he came as far as the gate of the king and stood. For it was not lawful for any to enter into the courtyard wearing sackcloth and ashes. And in every territory where the letters were being posted publicly, there was shouting and weeping and great mourning among the Judeans. They brought down sackcloth and ashes for themselves. Then the queen's maids and eunuchs came in and reported to her, because she was out of touch with what's going on in the streets. And she was troubled when she heard what had taken place. So she sent to clothe Mordecai and to take away his sackcloth, but he was not persuaded. Then Esther summoned Hakaratheus, her eunuch, who attended her, and she sent him to find out for her from Mordecai the exact situation. And Mordecai revealed to him what was happening, what had happened, and the promise which Haman gave to the king of 10,000 talents of the treasury so that he might destroy the Judeans. He also gave him the copy of the letter that had been published in Susa concerning their destruction to show to Esther, and he told him to command her to go in and entreat the king. Beg him for our people. Remember your days of low estate. Now you were sustained by my hand, how you were sustained by my hand, because Haman, who is second to the king, has spoken against us for death. Call upon Yahweh and speak to the king for us to deliver us from death. So Hakaratheus went in and told her all these words. Then Esther said to Hakaratheus, go to Mordecai and say, for all the people of the kingdom know that every man or woman who goes into the king and the inner court unbidden has no deliverance. However, to whom the king extends the golden scepter, this person will be safe. And I have not been called to go into the king these 30 days. So Hakaratheus told Mordecai all Esther's words. So Esther's like, nah, I can't, um, I can't go unless the king calls me. She didn't say she wouldn't go. She just saying, I'm not supposed to go in until the king calls me in. Right. So she says everybody knows that. Okay. Um, then then Mordecai said to Hakaratheus, go and say to her, Esther, do not say to yourself that you alone, do not say to yourself that you alone will be saved of all the Judeans in the kingdom. For if you do not listen at this time, there will be help and shelter. For if you do not listen at this time, there will be help and shelter for the Judeans from another place, but you and the house of your father will be killed. And who knows whether you are queen for this time. Then Esther sent him who had come to her to Mordecai, saying, go, convene the Judeans who are in Susa and fast for me, and do not eat nor drink for 3 days, night and day. And I indeed also my maidens shall fast. And when I shall go into the presence of the king, contrary to the law, even if I die. So she's saying, look, we're going to fast 3 days. And after the fast, I'm going to go and talk to the king and see the king, go see the king face to face. And, hopefully I won't die. Of course, she's hoping that she's hoping that she doesn't die. Right. So she's like, after, I'm going to go into the king. And when I go into him, whatever happens, happens. But of course, we know that she does not want to die. Okay. We know she does not want to die. And nobody wants to die. All right. So it's a very it's a very big thing right now. All right. And Mordecai went and did all Esther commanded him. He went and told the people, hey, y'all, it's time to fast so we can get up out of this trouble that we in. And we need to pray that, we need to pray that the Most High will, we need to pray that the Most High will have mercy on us because we need it right now. We need the grace and favor from our God, the God of Israel, right? So they want to go ahead and, they want to go ahead and fast to appease the Most High. They want to fast and ask favor from the Most High so that when she goes into the king, because they're not fasting for deliverance at this point, They're not fasting for deliverance. They're fasting for Esther's safety, when she goes into the king. And that's something that's, that's kind of you could call it unusual, because instead of saying, hey, we're gonna go to the most high and pray, they say, nah, we can do that, but we need to deal with this on a try to handle it on this way first. So it's kind of I don't want to say it's kind of I don't want to say an odd change of events, but it is something that you wouldn't necessarily expect, for them to come at the situation this way. All right. And then it says, give me a second. All right, so then she begged Yahweh, remembering all Yahweh's work. Then he begged Yahweh, remembering all Yahweh's work. And he said, Yahweh, Yahweh, King who rules over all things, for everything is in your power, and there is none who opposes you when you want to save Yasharahla, Israel, because you made the heaven and the earth and everything that is wonderful under heaven. And you are the Lord of all, and there is none who will oppose you, Yahweh. You know all things. You know, Yahweh, that it is not in insolence, nor not in arrogance, nor in love of honor that I have done this to refuse to bow down to the arrogant Haman. All right. For I will, for I would be well pleased to kiss the soles of his feet for Israel's deliverance. But I did this in order that I might not place the glory of a person above the glory of Yahweh. And I would not worship anything except you, my Lord. And I would not do these things in arrogance. And now, Yahweh Alahaya, the King, the God of Abraham, spare your people, because they look upon us for destruction, and they desired to destroy your inheritance from the beginning. Do not disregard your portion, which you redeemed for yourself from the land of Egypt. Hear my prayer and be merciful to your lot, and turn our mourning into feasting, in order that living we may sing of your name, Yahweh. And do not destroy the mouth that is praising you. And all Israel cried out for their strength, because their death was before their eyes. So here we see that the people are, are trying to pray to Yahweh for help and for deliverance. And we also must note that this is all because of one man. So note the contrast between Vashti, who was disobedient toward the mortal king, and Mordecai, who is honoring the eternal king, Yahweh. So Vashti, they were looking at the situation that we got to check Vashti, we got to punish her so that all of the other women don't try to have the same disrespect toward their husband. But with Mordecai, they're like, we got to punish Mordecai and his people because of the disrespect that he expressed toward me. And look at Haman's pride, because the king said, hey, Vashti didn't come when I called her, so we're going to just stop her from being the queen. But Mordecai's like, oh, you didn't bow to me, which is a Mordecai's sin against Haman. His offense against Haman was not as bad as Vashti's against the king. But the king said, his advisor, yeah, man, let's just forget about her, get another woman. But Haman is like, nah, we got to kill you and your whole race of people, because he was hateful against the children of Israel. All right. So we have a lot of contrast. On the one hand, we have Vashti, and here we have Mordecai. We have Vashti being disobedient, but toward man, and then we have Mordecai honoring Yahweh. So with Vashti, they say, okay, you get pushed to the side for your offense. But with Mordecai, they said, you're going to get totally eliminated and your people because you didn't bow down to me. So it's a very different offense, and it's a very different consequence that Haman wants. So in essence, Haman has exalted himself above the king because he wants Mordecai to be punished worse than the king punished his own wife. Not only that, he wants all of the people to be punished too. All right. And the king's like, okay, well, you do what you do, man. You know, if that's what you think you want to do, go ahead and do it. And Esther the queen fled to Yahweh, seized in deathly anxiety, and removing her garments of glory, she put on garments of distress and grief. And instead of impressive spices, see that? She covered her head with ashes and dung. She put doo-doo. Most likely, you know, it was cow dung. Cow dung at this time was if you it sat, the doo-doo smell leaves it, and it burns like fuel because of the methane that's in it. And it doesn't stink when you burn it. All right. And she humbled her body very much. And as a matter of fact, when you smell cow dung, it doesn't have a very strong offensive smell. And every part that she loved to adorn, she covered with her tangled hair. And she petitioned Yahweh, God of Israel, and said, my Lord, Yahweh, you alone are our king. Help me, the one who is alone, not having a helper except you, because my danger is in my hand. I have been hearing from birth in my paternal tribe that you, Yahweh, took Israel out of all the nations and our ancestors from all their forebears for an eternal inheritance, and that you did for them everything you promised. And now we have sinned before you, and you have delivered us into the hands of our enemies because we glorify their gods. You are righteous, O Yahweh, and now they are not satisfied with our bitter slavery, but they have placed their hands to remove the decree of your mouth and to destroy your inheritance and to stop the mouth of those praising you and to quench your altar and the glory of your house and to open the mouth of the nations for the wondrous deeds of vain idols, and to have a mortal king be marveled at for eternity. O Yahweh, do not give over your scepter to those who have no being, and do not let them laugh at our downfall, but turn their plan against themselves and make an example of those who began this against us. Remember, O Yahweh, make yourself known in the time of our affliction, and encourage me, O King of the gods and Master of all dominion. Give eloquent speech into my mouth before the lion, and change his heart to hate the one who is fighting against us, to the end of him and of those who agree with him. But rescue us by your hand and help me, the one who is alone and not having a helper except you, O Yahweh. You have knowledge of all things, and you know that I hate the splendor of lawless ones and abhor the bed of the uncircumcised and of any alien. You know my necessity, that I abhor the sign of my proud position, which is upon my head on days of my appearance. I abhor it like a menstrual rag, and I do not wear it on the days of my rest. And your servant has not eaten at Haman's table, and I have not honored the feast of the king, nor have I drunk the wine of libations. And your servant has no joy from the day of my transition until now, except in you, O Yahweh, the God of Abraham, O Yahweh, the one who is mighty over all, hear the voice of the despairing and deliver us from the hands of evildoers and deliver me from my fear. So she said that she hates being around this man like she hates when her cycle comes, when she's on her period. All right. So she says on my period and being around this man, it's like the same thing. So she has to, kind of pretend when she's around him because she can't let him understand and know that. All right. So she's here we can see um that she's praying to the Most High. Okay. Um, um, because she knows that that's the only deliverance. So she's saying, let him have mercy on me and not kill me, and um, let him turn on the people that want to kill us. All right. So the prayer that we're reading right here is not included in your regular King James Bible. All right. But it's in the Apocrypha section as what they call the rest of Esther, like the addition to Esther. But now we have the sequence of what was happening. We have the sequence of things. We have the sequence of the procedure. So instead of it being at the back of Esther, it's put in a more chronological order. Okay. Then it happened on the third day. When she had ceased praying, she took off the garments of her service and put on her glorious clothes. And having become resplendent after she had called upon Yahweh, the overseer and savior of all, she took two devoted slaves, and she leaned upon one as though she were delicate, and the other one followed, bearing her train. That's the long piece behind her tunic, her garment, like behind her gown. And she was blushing in the flower of her beauty, and her face was cheerful as to be beloved, but her heart was distressed from fear. And this is the same thing that, Black women had to do during slavery, that Native American women and people that we now call Latino had to do during slavery. When so-called white men wanted to murder people on the haciendas, on the plantations, sometimes the woman would go in there and try to appease him, knowing that death was imminent. Sometimes it was successful. A lot of times it was not successful, and families and children would get sold off into slavery, and people would get beaten, whipped. All right, but Esther, has faith that the Most High heard her prayer and that she's gonna, get favor from him. And then, and when she had come through all the doors, she stood before the king. He was sitting upon the throne of his kingdom, and he had put on every vestment of his majesty, covered all over with gold and precious stones, and he was very dreadful. And when he lifted up his face, resplendent with glory, he looked with intense rage. Then the queen fell, and her complexion changed in faintness, and she bowed down upon the head of the slave who went before her. And Yahweh changed the spirit of the king to gentleness. She went into a lion's den like Daniel, and the Most High made him become gentle. And being distressed, he sprang from his throne and took her up in his arms until she stood. You know, then he comforted her with peaceable words and said to her, "What is the matter, Esther? I am your brother," meaning I'm close to you to help you. "Be bold. You shall not die, for our ordinance is public. Draw near." Having raised his golden scepter, he laid it upon her neck and greeted her and said, "Speak to me." So she acted like she was about to fall, and the king jumps up and grabs her, like, "Oh, what's wrong? Esther, holler at me. What's wrong?" Then she said to him, "I saw you, Lord, like an angel of God, and my heart was terrified for fear of your glory. For you are wonderful, Lord, and your face is full of grace." And while she was speaking, she fell from faintness, and the king was troubled, and all his staff comforted her. Now remember, she low key is, Jai like tired because she ain't ate nothing in like 3 days. So she lightweight famished. She ain't ate nothing. So this probably wasn't no act. She probably, really tired and the stress of all her people about to be exterminated, through genocide. She's, she's going through some stuff mentally and physically. But she went to her uncle, and then she went to Yahweh. Now notice she's going back and forth with her uncle. She's still not saying this what I'm gonna do. She's still submitting herself to that man. Even when it's a problem facing everybody, she still said, "Let me talk to my uncle." And then she said, "Let me go talk to Yahweh." And then she said, "Let me go talk to my husband." All right. So she's not out here just operating, on her own. And when the king said, "What do you want, Esther? What is your petition? Even up to half my kingdom, and it will be yours." And Esther said, "Today is my significant day." Now, notice Esther gives him reverence and respect first. "You are like an angel of Yahweh. My heart was terrified for fear of your glory. You are wonderful, all right? And your face is full of grace, all right? So she comes in praising him, all right, for how good he is, all right? So he says, "What do you want? I'll give you half my kingdom." And she says, "Today is my significant day. If therefore it seems good to the king, let both me and Haman come to the banquet that I shall prepare today." And the king said, "Hasten Haman, that we may do Esther's request." And both arrived for the banquet that Esther requested. And during the drinking party, the king, boy, they love to drink, don't they? The king said to Esther, "What is it, Queen Esther? Or what is it, Queen Esther? And it will be, and it will be as much as you ask." And she said, "This is my request and petition. If I have found favor before the king, let both me and Haman come again tomorrow to the banquet that I shall prepare for them, and tomorrow I shall do these things." So Haman went out from the king overjoyed and celebrating. But when Haman saw Mordecai the Judean in the courtyard, he became very angry. And when he entered into his own house, he summoned his friends and Zeresh, his wife, and he told them about his wealth and the glory that the king had invested in him, and how he had made him to have the first place and to lead the kingdom. And Haman said, "The queen did not invite anyone to the banquet with the king but me, and I have been invited for tomorrow, and yet these things do not please me. Whenever I see Mordecai the Judean in the courtyard," so he says, "The king is treating me good, but I'm still vexed about Mordecai because Mordecai won't submit. I got all this power and honor and recognition from the king, but Mordecai doesn't want to respect me yet." So he tripping because Mordecai don't want to give him no props. Because Mordecai won't bow down to him. Then his wife Zeresh and his friend said to him, "Let a poll of 50 cubits be cut down for you, which is about 75 feet. And at daybreak speak to the king, and let Mordecai be hung on the pole. Then go to the banquet with the king and celebrate. And what was said pleased Haman, and the pole was prepared. 75-foot pole. A pole, a cubit is about 18 inches. But Yahweh withdrew sleep from the king that night. So he called his teacher to bring the written daily memoranda to read to him. And he found the letters that were written concerning Mordecai, how he informed the king about the two eunuchs of the king when they were guards and sought to lay their hands upon Ahasuerus. Then the king said, what honor or favor have we done for Mordecai? And the servants of the king said, you have not done anything for him. And while the king was inquiring about the goodwill of Mordecai, behold, Haman was in the courtyard. And the king said, who is in the courtyard? And Haman entered to tell the king to hang Mordecai on the pole that he prepared. And the servants of the king said, behold, Haman is standing in the courtyard. And the king said, summon him. And the king said to Haman, what shall I do for the person I want to honor? And Haman said to himself, whom does the king want to honor, if not me? So he answered the king, as for the person the king wants to honor, let the servants of the king bring a stole of fine linen, nice linen garment, like a stole, like a cape, coat, which the king wears, and a horse upon which the king rides, and give it to one of his honored friends of the king, and let him dress the person whom the king loves, and let him mount him upon the horse, and let him proclaim through the broad streets of the city, saying, so it will be for every person the king exalts. And the king said to Haman, you have rightly spoken. So do for Mordecai, the Judean, who attends in the courtyard. And don't let one word that you have said fall away. So he said, yeah, do that for Mordecai. Put his clothes on, help him get his garment, help him look good, get him cleaned up, help him get on a horse and ride through the street with him. I want you to do it. So Haman, right? So Haman took the stole and the horse, and he adorned Mordecai and mounted him upon the horse, and he passed through the broad street of the city, and he proclaimed, saying, so it shall be, so it will be for every person the king wants to honor. Then Mordecai returned to the courtyard, but Haman turned back to his own home, distressed, his head covered. And Haman related the things that had happened to him to Zedekiah's wife and his friends. Then his friends and his wife said to him, if Mordecai is of the Judean race, and you have begun to be humbled before him, when falling, you will fall and not be able to withstand him, for the living God is with him. While they were yet speaking, eunuchs arrived, urging Haman to the drinking party that Esther had prepared. So Haman is kind of humiliated, and his wife is saying, well, if the king has given him this honor, and now you are serving Mordecai, then it ain't looking good for you. All right. It ain't looking good for you, man. Now the king and Haman entered to drink together with the queen. Then the queen said to Esther on the second day during the drinking party, what is it, Queen Esther? What is your request? And what is your petition? Let it be yours up to half my kingdom. And she answered and said, if I have found favor with the king, let my life be given for my request, and my word for my petition. For we have been sold, both I and my people, for destruction and plunder and slavery, and our children, my people, for destruction and plunder and slavery. We and our children, for servants and maidservants. And I took no heed, for the slanderer is not worthy of the court of the king. Then the king said, who is this? Whoever dared to do this thing? And Esther said, this person, the enemy, is Haman. This is an evil man. So Haman was terrified by the king and the queen. And the king stood from the symposium and went into the garden. But Haman was begging the queen, for he saw himself in trouble. But the king returned from the garden. Then the king returned from the garden, but Haman had fallen upon the couch, begging the queen. And the king said, so you assault even my wife in my house? And when Haman heard this, he was confounded in his face. Then Bugatha, one of the eunuchs of the king, said, behold, Haman prepared a pole for Mordecai, who spoke on behalf of the king. And a pole 50 cubits high had been set up at the house of Haman. And the king said, let Haman be crucified upon it. So Haman was hanged upon the pole which he prepared for Mordecai, and the king ceased his anger. All right. So everything that Mordecai had planned with Esther, the fasting, the prayer, to prepare for Esther's visit to the king, it all worked out. But in the meanwhile, the king couldn't sleep. The Most High took away the king's ability to sleep. So he had somebody come and read him, some of the archives and some of the records. So when he read the records, he's like, oh, what Mordecai, what did he do for me? Okay, well, do we reward him for, what he did? Like, nah, we didn't reward him. Like, well, he asked Haman, come here, what should be done? Haman's like, yo, do this, do that. The third, the king's like, yeah, Haman, you do that for him. At the same token, remember, nobody knows the relationship between Mordecai and Esther yet. Mordecai doesn't know. Esther does. I mean, Mordecai. Mordecai is unknown in his relationship with Esther. That's his first cousin. Nobody knows this, and Haman just want to kill everybody. He want to kill the Jews. He want to kill Mordecai. He want to kill all Israel, but he don't know that Esther is an Israelite also. So he's like, well, you know, um, I'm gonna kill these people. So then Esther's like, nah, you really not. It's like, what do you want? It's like, well, Haman's a wicked person. He want to kill all of my people. We good people. We don't deserve to be killed just because Haman doesn't like us or whatever, or Mordecai doesn't bow down to him. But Mordecai, he's the one that saved the king's life. So Mordecai saved the king's life. So it's like, well, this man saves your life. And the king gets up and said, man, I can't with this dude. So king get up and walk to the garden to think, get some fresh air, clear his brain out. So while he's over there, Mordecai is probably kind of like, because the couches were lower couches. So Mordecai is obviously making some type of physical contact with the couch where Esther is laying at or sitting at the dinner. Because back then, they had these long couches. You would recline, sit down on the couch, and you eat your food. All right. So now Haman is so pressed, so scared that he gets onto the couch where Esther is at. All right. He gets on the couch where Esther is. All right. It says Haman had fallen upon the couch, begging the queen. It's like, no, please, please, please. And so the king was like, yo, so you assaulting my wife now too. And then the other dude, right? Bogatha, he's like, yo, matter of fact, so he adds fuel to the fire. He like, matter of fact, Haman wants to actually kill Mordecai that spoke up for you. So Haman is like, oh, so Haman is like looking real bad right now. So the king is like, oh, so you want to kill Haman, the guy that saved my life? Matter of fact, Ahasuerus is like, go ahead and just hang him on that 75-foot pole that he wanted to use to hang Haman. And that's it. I mean, that he wanted to use to hang Mordecai. All right. So they got that resolved, but they still have the problem of the they still have the problem of the mass murder that's supposed to happen upon the Israelites. All right, they still got that problem upon the mass murder that's supposed to happen to the Israelites. So we'll take a break there. Um, we only got about 1, 2, 3. We got about less than 4 pages left. Less than 4 pages left to read. And we've read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We read about 6 odd pages now. So we got a lot of information in there. But as you read this, just understand the uh the uh the culture of what's going on. Okay? The culture. He's touching what his lady is sitting at. He ain't supposed to do that. He knows that, but he's so desperate, to stay alive because, of course, he can't call upon his God. We call upon our God, to help us in the Most High. He's bringing deliverance, So now they have the king more focused on Esther, Mordecai, and their salvation, but they don't go into it yet. Okay. So that's the plot thicken when we see, okay, well, all these people are now interconnected. You got the king, you have Esther, you have Mordecai, and you have Haman. And then you have the bodyguards saying like, yo, he want to kill the guy that saved you. So he's speaking up. The Most High took sleep from the king, made the king stay up. So he said, man, go read me something. That's when he found out about Mordecai. And then that's when he told Haman, hey, reward this guy by thus. Put him on a horse, ride through the horse, and said, this is what's going to be done to the man who honors the king. So he rode him through the town. So now he sees that he's getting favor. So now, unbeknownst to the king, unbeknownst to Haman, when they go into that dinner, Esther's primary mission is to deliver her people. Because remember, Esther doesn't really know that the king wants to allow Haman. Esther doesn't know that Haman is also trying to kill her uncle like soon. She doesn't know that. She doesn't know that. All right. So everything is coinciding together. So there's spiritual forces operating behind the scenes when you least think, when you least know. So you have to stay focused and appeal before Yahweh. Because she fasted and she prayed, and boom, the Most High is making this man lose sleep. And come read something to me. So he finds out, oh, morning, what do we do for him? So that praying and that fasting, it brings out the worst and it brings out the good. It's a strong spiritual force behind fasting and behind praying, behind begging Yahweh, understanding the fact that we have no other recourse, we have no other help, we have no other place to go but to Yahweh. When push comes to shove, our back is really to the wall. All right. So they prayed, they fasted, and they prepared to go into the king. And when they went into the king unannounced, you supposed to get killed for that. But the king had mercy on her, and the king said, well, what do you want? She said, I just want to make y'all a dinner. Come to my place. let's get some food. So they say they having a little dinner. And I was just like, yo, more, she said, um, the person, the enemy is Haman. This is an evil man, you know. And now King, okay, so you a Jew, and then Mordecai's a Jew, and now he wants to eliminate the people. You my queen, and you a Jew, you Israel, and then Mordecai saved my life, and he's Israel. So you two are good people. So what is this guy talking about? The king is like, yo, he realized he got played. The king realizes that he got played, and it's not gonna work out for the people that want to come against us. All right. The people that want to come against us. Um, and it's gonna end up being a massacre for all of the other people. A massacre. Because the Israelites took up arms, and everybody that wanted to destroy them, they ended up getting destroyed. So this is a true example of reaping what you sow. So again, this is part 2. We're going to come back and start from chapter 8 in the Greek. Pick up from there, and we got 8, and then we got 8, and then we got 9, and then we got 10. All right, so we read that. So everybody on hey, send Amaria up here. So never mind. So everybody on YouTube and everybody on Facebook, we'll see y'all later. Just go in the comment section real quick. Baba Kwame said, do you agree with my research that finds that Pope Nicholas's papal bull of Dum Diversas in 1452 largely led to us Israelites labeled um, as Sacraeans, Muslims, Hebrews, and other non-Christians um, being slaves? I don't know. I gotta look that up. But I know Israelites and Muslims were all, they had their own quarters in these towns. The first Hispaniola, Portugal, and parts beyond, including Oprica, Africa, and Tamarica, Caribbean, and even in the USA. Now, I do know that it was initially when they came into the Americas, they still saw us as being human. Um, and we quickly adapted to the European way of life when we were in the Americas. And one of the guys here, um, Bartolomé de las Casas, a Spanish monk, a Spanish religious leader, he was the one that was petitioning the people like, hey, don't do this to these people. These people are special. These people are like a holy people. That's what they said about the indigenous peoples in the Americas. So then they turned their sights to Africa. They turned their sights to Africa. And they had to almost like dehumanize the people from West Africa. Because even when they would convert to Christianity, the indigenous people were in captivity first. And then they said, we'll bring people from West Africa and put them in captivity. And they did that. But the initial system in 1441 with the Portuguese in West Africa was a captivity, a bondage. Then they moved to to work to pay off their passage to America under indentured servitude to work for a few years as a servant to pay off the trip to Africa or from Europe into the Americas. And then after a while, they said, well, we're going to make them slaves. But in the 1400s, there was slavery before that. Before 1452, there was 1441 with the Portuguese on the west coast of Africa. But I'm not sure if that papal bull is the one that was able to label non-Christian people as the ones that were becoming slaves. But I do know that people were put in slavery regardless of their religion. All right. Because when you look at and it's interesting because it was in a year later, all right, when you look at the history, it was a year later, if I'm not mistaken, in this is 1452, but it was a year later in 1453, all right, that the Muslims took over Constantinople, all right. So the Muslims did rise up, and if there was like a wholesale enslavement of those people, the Muslims, then it would have been an uproar from the Ottoman Empire. Um, Now, it's also interesting that when we study about the effects of 1492 and when they wanted to issue the extermination of the Israelites, that during that same time period, the Israelites were fleeing from the western part of the Mediterranean. They were leaving Spain and they were leaving from Portugal, and they were actually going around Greece and Turkey. So they got refuge in Muslim controlled companies, Muslim controlled areas. All right. Um, so the Muslims conquered it. The Ottomans conquered it from the Byzantine Empire. All right. Mehmed II was the leader, Mehmed the Conqueror, and then they had the Byzantine emperor who was killed in the process, right? Constantine the 11th. He was killed during that whole seizure of the land. You know, there's a movie about it also I've seen before. It's like almost a 2-month siege, and they kept banging, 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 and beating on walls because the walls were very thick, and they stopped all of the ships from coming into the waters, and they blocked the land. People couldn't come into Constantinople by land either. All right, because they didn't have their army spread around the country to defend. They were focused on, okay, we're gonna conquer this one city, and they didn't have enough garrisons, enough towers, and enough defensive positions around east and west of Constantinople. So it's just very interesting to me that in 1453, after this bull that you're talking about, you know, to enslave a certain people, that it's ironic that that the control of Constantinople was taken from them like a year later, and all of these Israelites and the Hebrews in Spain and whatnot went west. I mean, went east into Turkey. All right, went east into Turkey, and the same thing happened in 70 A.D. Turkey on the east, you know, by Izmir and the northern coast of the southern coast of Greece across from Turkey, and the eastern coast had always been a refuge for Israelites to go to in the Mediterranean, almost like how people look at Egypt in the scriptures as a place of refuge. Right? But I'm not too familiar with exactly what the so-called Pope Nicholas, that particular papal bull. Maybe we can have a conversation about it later when I research it a little more. A Askia and Songhai, no joke. Yep, Askia Muhammad. He issued either convert to Islam, go to jail, get killed, or leave the empire. Those are the choices that they gave us. Um, and those are all comments or inquiries from Kwamalek. Um, Now, anybody that's on the conference call, you got something to say, go ahead and unmute yourself. Floor is yours. If anybody's trying to say something, you're muted. You can unmute your phone and say something if you want to say anything. If you don't want to say nothing, it's okay. You know, we'll get up off of here, and then we'll come back on in a little while and finish the rest of these chapters. But we did read a lot today. But this is a very deep, intricate plot. There's a lot going on behind closed doors, and there's a lot that Yahweh is doing to help on our behalf. All right. He's directing people and moving people. In chapter 6, verse 1, it says, "But Yahweh withdrew sleep from the king that night. So he called his teacher to bring the written daily memoranda to read to him." So read to me some of the history of things that are going on. And he read it to him um, about Mordecai, and then realized that nobody had done nothing to recognize Mordecai, to show appreciation for him saving the king's life. Like they were actually trying to murder the king. All right. And that's how everything, got really kicked off. In that same time frame, Haman is coming in. A busybody. Haman is coming in. Hey, I want to kill somebody else now. I want to. And he's like, yeah, go ahead and kill him, man. Don't worry about it. Um, it says, yeah, go ahead and kill him, man. Um, because he already gave him he went in to get that permission. Um, he's like, yo, the dude I want to kill, that's the dude I'm supposed to be honoring with the king. I mean, for the king, you know? So you never know how things work out. You got to stay true. You can't compromise. You can't cave in, to a job, to a parent, to a spouse that wants you to do something wicked or unlawful to please them or for them to get, what they want. You can't succumb to somebody's blackmail or threats. You can't succumb to somebody's extortion, spiritual extortion, to do something against Yahweh. That's not love. That's not respect. That's not honor. Always stay true to the Most High. Always stay true to Yahweh. Don't compromise. Whatever the scripture says to do that, and don't let anybody tell you anything different. Even if they say, well, this is going to be a benefit for you if you do it this way, which is the wrong way. You say, no, I'm not doing that. Because that's the wrong way. And you shouldn't be doing things in a way that the Most High said, Yahweh said, don't do these things. Always stay true to what Yahweh said, no matter the circumstances, no matter the situation. Stay true to Yahweh. All right, stay true to Yahweh. All right. So again, if there's anybody wants to say something, go ahead and say it. If not, then we're gonna get up off of here and come back in a few hours. I don't know if anybody want to say anything again. You know, I count to 10 silently. If nobody says something, we'll uh, go ahead and get off. All right, everybody. Um, is we finished or is we done or we both? All right, so shalom, Mashpaka, shalom.